Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner. Sorry, being away during lockdown, taking time for myself, being sort of coming to terms with my own thoughts as to what's been going on recently in the UK and in the wider world as well. Hope everyone's all right. If anyone has caught up with my previous reviews, sort of organically through search and so on, thanks very very much. It's really appreciated. Yeah, so we're in a continue to be in a very peculiar set of circumstances at the moment with exhibitors still shut, although we might be on the cusp of change there depending on what happens at the start of July. Again, it seems premature to predict what's going to happen 24 hours in advance, let alone several weeks in advance, but we'll wait and see on that. Obviously, streaming has really come into its own over the last few months, and Spike Lee has now released his latest film onto Netflix, The Five Bloods, which has been getting an awful lot of attention. A fellow journalist of mine, Amon Woman, interviewed Spike Lee. Had the great pleasure of interviewing Spike Lee, so I'd really go and check that out. It's really great. He did it for NME. So what to say about Spike Lee's latest movie? So it follows on the hot on the heels of Black Klansman, which came out in 2018, which was acclaimed as Spike Lee's most relevant and brilliant movie in years. Spike Lee had done sort of a few years of quite stalling, meandering movies before that. Black Klansman really announced his return to the forefront of filmmaking, and he won his first Oscar for it for Best Adapted Screenplay. So this movie kind of has a lot to live up to in that sense. It is essentially the story of a group of aging African American Vietnam War veterans who return to Vietnam to both locate the body of their fallen comrade and also to locate the gold that they were originally meant to be making off with back in the 1960s when they were at the height of the conflict. And what the movie does very effectively is it shifts aspect ratios. So in the contemporary sequences, when the older characters have returned to Vietnam, you get a anamorphic, like, wide ratio. And then during the sequences when we flash back to when they were in Vietnam in the 1960s, the screen contracts like that. And also what you get is a treatment of the image. The flashback sequences are treated in a way that looks grainy and sort of period authentic. So you get an interesting sort of visual approach, which Spike Lee is a very obviously flamboyant visual director. I mean, you think of things like Do the Right Thing, like that, in which, Do the Right Thing, you can practically smell the Brooklyn streets, you can smell the sweat, you can smell the kind of broiling racial tension. And of course, Lee is not backwards in coming forwards in addressing sort of provocative issues of racial injustice and systemic racism in sort of very bold, upfront, sometimes none too subtle manners. Sometimes subtlety is not Spike Lee's register, but there is no denying that the vast majority of his work is driven by a real passion and a real sense of energy, and it's much the case here as it was in Black Klansman. So you have a brace of very good performances from actors who very often are sidelined. Actually, primarily Delroy Lindo and Clark Peters. These actors are they're often side characters. They often steal the show from the sidelines. They're put front and center in this. Delroy Lindo appeared in Malcolm X opposite Denzel Washington, which is widely regarded as one of, if not the best, Spike Lee movie, and it's really great to see him at the forefront in this, playing of the group, playing the character who never really left the jungle. Sort of psychologically, that Vietnam left its kind of imprint on him in all the wrong ways, and then his grown-up son later joins the group to claim his share of the gold, and there is a kind of father-son fractious relationship at the centre, which again that's a very Spike Lee theme as well. So there's lots and lots going on in the movie. The movie actually begins with a classic Spike Lee montage sequence, the likes of which we did see in Black Klansman, in which what you get at the very start of the movie, scored to Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues, is you get footage of the civil rights movement in America intercut with footage of African Americans in the Vietnam War. And what the movie then does is it follows that theme through to its conclusion, which is that the oppressed African American communities were drafted to basically go in and oppress another nation on the other side of the world on behalf of Uncle Sam. So you've got the oppressed oppressing another oppressed people. So there is this real sense of irony and anger and sadness, which again is classic Spike Lee, going right the way back to the likes of Do the Right Thing. I think probably the best scene in the movie is a flashback sequence in which we see the main group, who interestingly enough in the flashback sequences aren't de-aged in the manner of Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. The actors are presented as they are, albeit filmed from something of a distance to so that it's not so jarring. But in the flashback sequences in which we also see Chadwick Boseman as the person whom later on in the film they are compelled to return to Vietnam to seek out his body, Chadwick Boseman and the rest of the group are listening to the Hanoi Hana radio broadcast, and they hear that Martin Luther King has been assassinated, and they are completely disempowered because they are on the other side of the world in Vietnam fighting a phony war. Whereas the war that they should be fighting is happening in the civil rights movement back in America. And this kind of classic sense of exploitation and oppression and disempowerment as filtered through the eyes of the African American community. Again, I need to be very careful with this because this is a fractious subject at the moment. I don't want to, in my position, white-splain or patronise. I'm just seeing this as filtered through the perspective of the film and as filtered through my knowledge of prior Spike Lee movies, but I don't want to come over all heavy-handed and polemical and sanctimonious, because the movie is for the most part very entertaining. It is a B movie. It's a B movie adventure that kind of crosses Apocalypse Now rather with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. It is a B movie with societal sort of lacerating societal observations to make, and I think that is an interesting approach. I have to say, for me, at 2/3 of the way through, I think the movie lost it for me, and it introduces, there are too many characters going on, and I think what it tries to do is it tries to in the modern day sequences reflect what is going on in the back in the wartime sequences, and that is a real shame. I think that the movie becomes overextended, it is too long, it needs half an hour taken out of it, but I think the acting is brilliant. I think the passion on display is really impressive. I think Terence Blanchard's score is really, really good. It plays up the valour and the inherent nobility of these characters, which I think is very, very good. The score is great. Terence Blanchard is a fabulous composer. I would encourage you to go and check it out, because even if it is flawed and messy and overlong, there is passion in it, and there are enough provocative ideas that you will take away from it, which make it a worthwhile watch. So it's called The Five Bloods. It's directed by Spike Lee. It's on Netflix now. Drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner if you've seen it or are planning to see it, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.